Hello, everyone. Great to see you. Welcome to Fired Up. My name is Morgan McLintic, and today I'm joined by Ian Lipner. Hey, Ian.
Hey, Morgan. Good to see you.
So today we're going to be talking about, is AI making marketing worse? I think we've all been very excited to use AI. We've all adopted it into our workflows. But now we're at a stage where we're starting to see some of the downsides. And I think this is a really good question to tackle at the current time.
We are right at the edge of the point where folks 25 years from now could say to us, hey, why didn't you, in a bunch of different ways? So it should be an interesting conversation.
So let's just start. We're going to talk about the argument for the reasons for why AI is making marketing worse. And I think the first point is, in terms of content creation, the sheer volume of content that it is creating, a large volume of fairly same sounding blog posts, LinkedIn posts of the type that 7 tips founders must know according to AI, or I asked ChatGPT for these things, you'll never guess what it said. And we've seen these over and over, the type of content that it churns out. And it's even got a name, AI slop. And AI slop is everywhere. And I think one of the main reasons why people might say AI is making marketing worse is for this very reason.
That's what's happening. You can see it in a much more obvious way when you look at the earlier versions of the image creation tools. And the extra thumbs, though, are in the pros too. Right now, we're mostly focusing on text and content, things like that. But more and more people are using this not just to turn a phrase, but to come up with entire content strategies. So it's not surprising to see that it's starting to look the same across companies, like some weird Mad Lib where they've injected a different product as the thing to contend with today's fast-paced business environment.
Yes. In today's fast-paced business environment, lots of people are turning to ChatGPT for things that it's not appropriate for. Whole marketing strategies. I'm just going to type this in. I've had conversations with VCs who have said, I'm just going to, for my portfolio companies, ask them to use ChatGPT to turn out their website. Now, if you want a lowest common denominator website, go for it. I do think tools like that are creating content that wouldn't ordinarily have been written, which fair, but there are use cases where people are using ChatGPT to respond to a media inquiry. What are your thoughts about this trend? I'm looking for a source. They're not looking for a prompt from ChatGPT. They're looking for your insights as an expert in the field that are unique to you. And that's just a real problem. So I do see enthusiastic but inappropriate use of Gen AI tools like that clogging up the works a little bit.
It almost sort of reduces the credibility of the content that surrounds it, right? Like I even saw a brand clearly use ChatGPT for social content, and I clicked through anyway. And it was like a really good, well done article, and folks had spent a lot of time on it, and it got short shrift, right? Because somebody decided the social team didn't need another human, despite it literally being about being social. And we have enough bot generated conversation in social media already that we do not need humans in the loop surrendering to creating the same.
That's definitely an issue. We actually did an episode about AI content generation. And I think at the time, the stat was something like 56% of people couldn't recognize AI generated content. And there was a recent survey where that's gone up to 80% who can. And it reflects negatively on the brand. So I think audiences are getting tuned into what sounds like AI generated content, and they can feel sort of duped in the wrong situation. and then it reflects badly on the brand. And so, judiciously using it, fine. You should accelerate your processes. I don't want to be a Luddite and feel like it shouldn't be used at all. You see on social a lot AI generated images, and they've got errors. It's not just the sixth finger, but any writing has got typos. And you would never, as a graphics designer, put that out on social with a typo in it. Yet somehow it's okay if it's Gen AI. And I think it's easy to assume that audiences will give you a pass on it because it's obviously Gen AI, but they don't. They just think you use Gen AI and you didn't even bother doing any post work on this to tune it up. And it looks bad.
The tolerance of the brand to allow something like that to roll out is sort of part of a let's show that we're getting things done mentality, I think, more than, hey, are we really reaching our audience with the message that is going to excite them or drive them to action? And I wonder whether the perception of those who aren't in creative areas that volume is pretty much equal in importance to quality. I wonder whether that's driving it. It's sort of like of the mind, there's no sense in me adding up all these numbers by hand. Let's just use a calculator. But that's not a process that is creative. And I think a lot of the times the folks that tend to use calculators most often, I won't be too prejudicial, are the ones that are saying, let's go ahead and use a similar tool that for your industry. And I think they don't necessarily appreciate the gap there between content that works and content that exists.
Yeah. A calculator is 100% correct, and a generative AI tool isn't. A calculator produces the best accurate result, but that's definitely not the case with Gen AI. And so that's a sort of second argument, I think, against AI is just a lack of creativity, because we're expected to cover a lot of ground, as you said, and we just don't have the time to go the extra step. And I would say, look, for a lot of startups, 80% is good, right? Get it to 80% and go on to the next thing. Good enough is good enough. But I think there is a temptation using these tools to just go with almost the first draft and become a little bit of a lazy marketer. And it shows, and people can tell that you haven't respected this work. And by inference, you're not respecting your audience. And whether they say that explicitly or not, whether they can even articulate it, I think it sort of sits there radiating that kind of respect if you think that the work isn't that great.
I think there are a few things at play here. First, I think people are choosing the wrong tools, and the tools haven't necessarily evolved or become ubiquitous enough within the specific practices for there to be a easy way to know, hey, how do I integrate the right AI tool for the right job? And I think we're seeing more of that in design. We had a podcast where we talked about that with the Punch folks. So a lot of it is sort of taking what we've always done, like using an Excel spreadsheet to do every single thing, right? Excel spreadsheets were basically software for years in companies that couldn't afford to do something more. Same thing is happening with these Gen AI tools. So that's happening. And the reason it's a bad way to do it is that these Gen AI tools, generative AI in particular, is focused on finding the most average response, the thing that's right down the middle, which is the opposite of what you're trying to do with creativity. Creativity is about being a proud outlier and being an interesting outlier. And Gen AI, by definition, is bad at that. Now, a tool will evolve where they go, let's set this for weird. And you're going to get different, but you're still going to get the average of the things that have already existed. And while it currently can be a great creative tool for going through the 25, 30 ways to approach narrative, ways to tell a joke, the proven tried and true things, it's not great at creating something novel because it doesn't have an example to use. And maybe some randomness will be thrown into future tools, and there will be that ability.
Genuine creative
Yeah.
spark from a Gen AI tool, that would be amazing rather than the sort of mean average.
But the tools now are not meant for doing that. They're for looking very normal, right? And so for normal things, hey, let's write a polite note to my landlord explaining I need somebody to service the sink. Great. But that's not a place where you're trying to be creative.
That's fair. And, listen, we can probably spot Gen AI in copywriting, but increasingly tools like Canva's Magic Design that's used for creating social posts, you sort of see the same formats and fonts and tropes and colors, stock photography. So we're going to get tuned into that. So I think the lesson here is just understand it's great for the first sort of quick and dirty draft and a bit of get you up to that initial thing, but you've then got to polish it up. So arguments against the volume, the lack of creativity. The next one is it's sort of eroding trust because some brands, for instance, are using Gen AI to produce user reviews of their products in variants. It sounds like Gen AI, and they're sort of fake user reviews so that they can get more stars, whether, I don't know, G2 or on their own site. And you can kind of see it on Amazon, for example, all the fake reviews. So people therefore are becoming a little bit more wary. And so there's a trust issue with the types of content that it's creating too. And I think that's a different issue.
The closer your brand is to people's money, to people's identity, to the things they hold closest, the more you need to be careful about being synthetic. And it's fine if I'm at the gas station and something pops up there that's like, oh, I hope your day is going well today. Here's the weather. I really don't want that to happen to me ever, but it's fine if it happens there. But I'm not going to be okay if a brand that my bank starts sending me AI based messages or tries to convince me to meet with one of their advisors using AI invitation. And the chatbots, they are frustrating and obviously not human. And it almost feels like you're playing a game to try to trigger it to do the thing you want it to do. But, spin forward a couple more generations of software, I can see how it's going to get harder to tell for a while. And it makes me think that the things that are most human will come forward as most important to brands, right? Emotion, right? Like right now, people don't really express a lot of emotion with their brands. They're pretty much trying to stay on the safe side, I'd say, especially in today's climate. But I could see a future where people are more effusive or brands are more effusive so that they are more human, especially the brands that are going to interact more with automation. When your future McDonald's order is not handed to you by a person, are you going to feel differently about McDonald's, or they're going to keep that person at the drive-through window because you need people?
But you're used to calling into a phone. Like there was a time where I don't want to talk to the IVR for a phone call when I want a support call. And now I would argue a lot of people don't want to talk to a human because it's just going to be faster to talk to the bot. So maybe we're going to get past that interface as we get used to it and as they get better. But this trust issue, is this a real person or not? Is this a deep fake? I think is definitely sort of in there. You see it in fake comments on LinkedIn, right? Where they summarize what you've said on a post and then finish with a question. You see that all the time. And I see people responding to them. And maybe there's some tool that this person, commenter.ai or something, that they're using to just sort of spread a bunch of comments around LinkedIn. And people will respond, and that's your choice. Normally, it's someone completely out of the blue, a third-party contact. I don't love that. I don't know that they've actually read the article and they're just asking a question. Often they ask the question that's answered in the blog post and deeper down. So it seems a poor use of the tool, but it can erode trust. Another area I see at the moment that AI is making marketing worse is in messaging. Every messaging session that we have is how can I get agentic AI into my messaging? This might be a temporary thing, but the sameness of messaging where everyone is trying to get agentic into their messaging, or if they're not, it's very difficult to explain why you don't want agentic in it. You have to take a strong stance. Sometimes it's not appropriate, but you have to sort of explain why it's not in there when it's not. And so we've got this little moment in time where everyone's agentic washing, or at least pushing it into their messaging, and everyone sounds the same in very similar ways. I think it's important to sort of note that.
Yeah, I mean, we see this a lot though, right? Cloud enabled, like virtualized, going all the way back. I think people are trying to say, "Hey, we've got the thing that people think is cool and new." But I think one thing that's worse is that they'll add it when it doesn't necessarily improve the offering, right? I don't want to talk to a chat bot when I can type in a phrase that will get me my result. Even I accidentally toggled an AI pilot on my Brave browser and I didn't even know it had it, so the sort of non-authentic use of AI where all it's doing is adding a front end that's a chatbot, that's different. But when agents start doing things for consumers that are useful, I think we're going to see an even bigger flow into that. They'll probably rename it, but
Yeah, I'm down with the agentic part of it. It's just at the moment, everyone's sounds the same.
yeah, that's one reason for the sameness for sure.
What about in jobs? One of the ways AI could be making marketing worse is it's basically cutting out particularly entry-level jobs, the next generation of marketers who have got to start somewhere by doing something fairly routine. And AI can do that faster and more cheaply. And so do you have a concern that sort of we're going to lose a generation of marketers as they come through because nobody hired them at that point?
Yes, I am concerned in a word. In general, it's part of a larger trend where it's very difficult to survive in the business world being average. When I think about what a entry level person needs to be able to bring to the table now, it's more than just fairly competent research and prose, because I can get that in a click. So what I need to see in that person is what is the potential that person brings and what can they do or want to do more accurately that will just grow faster than this AI revolution will. And the things that the AI, that artificial intelligence just won't ever be great at, which I tend to believe it will never be able to have the emotional intelligence required to move through a career or whatever, displace every level. I also think that because folks aren't immediately utile in the same way, that they'll need to deliver more than just that basic service package of an entry level employee. They'll need to bring new ideas, new technique, and most importantly, they'll need to know how to use these AI tools better than we do. Just like I knew how to use the web better than my first boss. So the longer term concern that I have is around the disintermediation of knowledge and skill as an asset that someone builds over their lifetime that brings them pride and brings them fortune. I want to believe that the future will include folks who are able to acquire this knowledge that isn't superseded by AI. If in the future my children cannot become expert at something and therefore valued in a different way, meaning people are willing to pay them higher salaries, then we're going to see a stagnation for workers in general, and that they can only do the things that AI can't or do yet. So that's a much heavier topic, but I do think that in America, acquiring knowledge and skill has been the way to go from one socioeconomic window to the next. And that is imperiled by the desire to put everything into artificial intelligence's hands. And I think it can be something that is avoided by making sure that humans are in the loop for as many tasks as possible until we're at that point where we can reasonably sort of pass from one era of industrialization to the next. And it's a very broad topic, but in that world of BR, I think it just means, hey, knowing how to write a sentence isn't enough. You need to be a copywriter. Knowing how to look up something in a media tool is not enough. You need to figure out what drives that media person's coverage and interest and where they might be heading next in their careers, even. You need to know a lot more than you did before, but at least you don't have to spend all your time looking at Excel sheets.
I agree with you on that. I still think, and we'll come on to why we think AI is making marketing better, but just to the topic of jobs, it is taking away tasks that might have been done. But at the same time, when I started in PR, I'm cutting out clippings from a newspaper and measuring them and gluing them onto a piece of paper and photocopying them and sticking them in a book. And nobody does that anymore. And frankly, what did I learn? I learned a bit of discipline from that, and I can cut in a straight line. But it's not very applicable to a digital world. But I do think for people entering the PR industry, this is a great time. They can be the best at AI. Nobody else has really got years of experience in this. So you can be super fluent in it. We saw it with social media and we saw it with digital. You don't need to learn some certain lower level skills, but you can spend your time learning better strategies there. And I do think nothing can replace human creativity or human connections and relationships. And so, you're never going to be able to replace, hey, I know this reporter and I know what makes them tick and I know what they're interested in. And I have ideas that might engage them. And that's true of PR, but it's true in lots of other areas where your connections and your relationships that you bring are going to be super vital, and you can't automate that away with AI. And I've seen people postulate that AI is going to replace the whole marketing department, and good luck to you, because all your competitors are going to way outperform you if that's the strategy that you take, because you're going to have the sort of lowest common denominator version of a marketing strategy there. It just cannot replace humans' creativity and connection. Okay, this feels like a great time to turn to the more positive impact of AI, because I think we here are big fans of AI. It's easy to sort of poke holes in all the negatives. We're sort of, I guess, at the point where, what is it? The slope. Now we're doing the slope of disillusionment. Everyone was excited about it. Now we're realizing all the bad things. It's just a point in time. It's going to have a huge positive impact on marketing too. So let's just go through those points. You sort of touched on efficiency, but probably that's a good jumping off point.
I think that the tasks that are repetitive or almost menial, sure, I think we can take a lot of those off the table, or at least the time in them. This is where I like to use the microwave analogy. Right? When microwaves came out, people were trying to cook everything in them, and you should not cook meat in the microwave, folks. But people were doing that, and somebody's going to write in and say, "Oh, actually, there's a way to do it." Yeah, don't put your fish in the agency microwave anymore.
That was literally, we had a food crime. Somebody did that at work, and
yeah, that's like pulling a fire alarm. From what I recall, in the 80s, everybody was super into buying entire microwave meals and all that. Like, again, using the wrong tool and the same tool for everything. Now, microwaves are still in the American kitchen because they do a few things that are sort of menial, if you will, very well. They boil water pretty fast. They heat up your bagel, make a baked potato better than probably any other method as a speed thing. But we do stop there. We don't try to use it for everything else after it, and it's settled into its role in our kitchen, and we don't want a fancy, more complicated automatic microwave. None of those things evolved from that. It became a very useful tool, and that's where I think Gen AI is, for example. That's how I think it will mostly evolve. But in terms of some of the other things, There's still room for improvement in terms of, hey, derive insights from this Excel spreadsheet for me. There's the beginnings of that, but then I'm finding errors. I can see that there are ways that's going to improve where we'll be able to derive things from digital marketing, like A/B testing, performance reporting, which then, to be honest, the less we're spending time on trying to line up Excel sheets with our eyes, the more time we have to spend on strategy and on narrative and the things that actually make your team excited. So I think that's one way, that sort of the microwave way to use AI. That's how you can use it for efficiency.
Traditional AI, machine learning is really good at pattern detection in a way that humans are not. And
Yeah.
so it can look for anomalies, it can look for customer segmentation, it can look for behaviors that you couldn't see just looking through rows of data. And so you would then be able to build whole campaigns around segments that maybe you wouldn't have spotted before, or you might look at your customer churn and realize there are particular triggers making people churn out, and therefore you could either adjust the product or you can have a campaign to sort of re-educate people or offset that or intercept them before they do churn. And that's just not possible without AI. And it's absolutely brilliant at that. It's also excellent at personalization. Mass personalization has been a dream of marketers. The one-to-one at scale email that you get, the one-to-one web experience even. We talked about that. You come to a website and it knows who you are, and you get your very own customized version of that web experience because it knows what sector you are, it knows your seniority, it maybe knows your disposable income, or whatever it is. It knows your prior behavior, and it can tailor the content to you. And partly that's rules, and partly it's Gen AI because it's building that experience on the fly. That would be amazing. You have to be careful that it doesn't get sort of creepy. And I think that sort of creep factor has been prevalent for a long time. When you get a text message when you're in a particular area, hey, do you want to drop into my store? Wait, what? Or I even, when I go to websites now and it says, hello, Morgan, how are you? I just don't like that because it reminds me that you're tracking me around the internet, even though I know you are doing it and I do it for other clients. I don't want to be reminded of that. So there's a sort of creepiness factor. But marketing programs like Spotify Wrapped, right, has been hugely successful for that brand by tailoring a brand experience by user, and people then share it. They love that. And you see that other brands have then emulated that strategy. I use Strava, and it has a nice little thing that says at the end of the year, here's all the sporting things you did and how far you ran and how far you cycled and how many times you worked out. That's super fun. I'm not going to share it, but I think it's super fun. I had the same from Bill.com. Hey, let's celebrate how many invoices you sent and the biggest one and the debtor days that you had. Less exciting from Bill.com, I would say.
Yeah.
It's certainly
Yeah.
not going to share that one. But I do think AI's ability to personalize your marketing content and your brand experience is unparalleled.
I kind of feel like that this is the shoe I've been waiting for Apple to drop. Siri is it's shameful at this point. And they're talking about Apple Intelligence, but I trust my phone. I trust Apple. I do think that they do a good job at maintaining my privacy, certainly compared to other brands. And I would be open to personalization on a broader scale. Like, hey, my phone has seen every order I've placed, all my texts, all my geolocations, and it knows me fine. Show me the clothes I'd want to buy when I walk into a store. You know my body type, you know my size, like, you know my practices in advance. Cut down a lot of help me sort through all of that sameness and find the things that work for me. And we know that, for example, credit card companies have tremendous intelligence within their fraud detection capabilities. We know that this is possible, right? But we haven't seen it move into, I don't know, into our devices, certainly. But, we don't have to call our credit card company anymore before we go on a vacation because it already knows, it saw that you bought the ticket, and it knows that you're stopping to get that soda at the airport, and it sees your breadcrumbs and all that kind of thing. Please tell me which guitar I should buy. You know me. Come on. Please tell me which concert is coming that I need to get a ticket for before they're already $500 and I can't go anymore. I want those things. But yeah, don't come up to me and be like, hello, fellow teenager, how are you today? Don't try to trick me and let me opt in. And I think that some of this tech lends itself really well to it, that Gen AI will become more assistant like and make you feel like you have someone that's a companion for you rather than just something watching what you do and feeding it back into some marketing platform that you don't see. So I think a lot of that personalization is going to improve. And that might be, you might have uncovered the place that makes AI actually better at certain things than we are, because we can't possibly adjust that quickly for every individual case.
In hearing you talk there, it made me think that one of the vital skills that marketers can bring to this is judgment and taste. Because you've got to decide, is this copy good enough? Is this idea strong enough? Are these graphics conveying the message well enough and reflective of our brand? Where is the line on personalization between helpful and creepy? And that is something that AI cannot do. But as a marketer, this sort of judgment and level of taste is rare and to be treasured. And you refine it over time. You cross the line sometimes and, you're like, okay, you don't listen to your gut in that moment. And you gradually, as you get more experience, you get to listen to that sort of instinct and build on it, and it gets truer. That is vital as marketers. And I think when it comes to AI, there's lots of opportunities for judgment to be made. And that's something that is a vital skill. And I think when we were talking about bringing in people early in the industry at the early stages of their career, it's very exciting. They're there for their potential, but they're also there for their judgment. And they can show that very early on in the kinds of things that they let go through and the kinds of things that they also put more work into. One of the other advantages here, we had it in our disadvantage column in terms of the democratization of information. If it's everywhere, that's bad if you used to have a lot of value as being the holder of that hard-earned information. But actually, it also sort of occurs to me, it sits in this column too, whereas I am a small marketing team. We got 2 people. We're a seed round, A round company. There's 2 of us still building our marketing team. We've got a lot of ground to cover, and we've got some skills, but we've got a lot of gaps. And so something like an AI tool can quickly sort of scale up and ladder up some of those weaknesses and sort of get you to minimum viable product marketing output in areas where we just don't have the skills. And, it's not as good as an expert in that area, but you know what? It certainly doesn't look amateur.
Yeah. I think that is the other side of it, is that it will take a long time to figure things out yourself. And having a easy to interact with way for somebody to explain it to you is not a bad thing. So when I talk about, what will happen when knowledge is no longer a ladder to financial success, the precursor to that is you have to get to a certain knowledge point to begin with and then climb from there. I think that the way that this can be very powerful is for folks who maybe know how but can't scale. They need to sort of clone themselves, if you will. So it's not so much about knowledge as it is about capacity. And there are those areas that sort of have maybe some barriers to entry, whether it's intellectual or artificial. And of course, we spend most of our time trying to work with the companies that tear down those artificial barriers. If those impediments are lifted, it can enable an individual to do a lot more than they would otherwise. Some folks aren't good at thinking about finances, for example, and financial information, accounting, all that kind of stuff. And they might not start a business because they feel like, hey, I can't handle the things that aren't related to my craft. Now they're more empowered to go forth because they can not just have some tool, but say to ChatGPT, hey, what does this mean? And okay, so if I do this, what will happen? And that means that more people will take a chance on themselves and express their, or I shouldn't say express, but reach their potentials within their careers because they're not bound by something that they don't think that they'll ever understand. So I can see a lot of value there. And also for the light touch expertise that you need, that shouldn't require a full enrollment with the provider. Do I even need to talk to a lawyer about this? Do I even need to see a doctor? That kind of prior step, which also I'm sure takes up cycles for, we have folks sometimes approach us that really aren't ready for PR yet. They might have a great thing going, but they're just not at that point yet. And if they can find that out before we get on a 30-minute call with them, that makes them move faster and us move faster too. So information wants to be free is something that I've long held as true and worth fighting for. That's where I feel so conflicted here, is between this, like, yes, I want everyone to have the knowledge they need, but also, what's that guy doing with that chainsaw? Yeah.
Yeah. I want everyone to have the information that they need, but I want them to still value the information that I've got because I want that to be unique.
People can become mixed up with what's expertise and what's a little bit of dangerous knowledge. That's what I mean about that chainsaw. Like, you can get all the instructions you want, you can watch all the YouTube videos you want, but you're going to be the one out there with that thing, and it doesn't always go as planned. And so expertise is more than just information. It's also experience.
Well, that sounds like a great note to wrap us up here, Ian. I think our take is, look, AI has definitely made marketing worse by churning out AI slop, inhibiting creativity, eroding trust, maybe taking some jobs that otherwise might have been done by entry-level people. But it is also making marketing much better by accelerating the process, helping with personalization, being a great thought partner and research partner there, getting you up to speed on areas of your marketing that maybe you didn't really know, but it can now sort of get you to some level of competency. But as marketers, this is a very exciting time. It's a time of great change. But I do think there is a difference between, as you said, expertise and experience and knowledge, and valuing your judgment and taste as a marketer is irreplaceable. So I do think this is an exciting time for us to be startup marketers, even if it's one that's full of tumult and change. So, Ian, listen, thanks for your time today. Love talking to you about this. And thanks to you all for joining us. If you have comments, please do drop them below and subscribe wherever you get your podcast. We would love to see you again next week. We'll talk to you soon.